good thing to think about and to remember, right? Surrender. So you ready to have some fun? So there was once a vacuum salesman who approached a house in rural Tennessee. He went up to the house, knocked on his door with all of his stuff with him, and the woman of the house opened the door, and he said, "Hi, ma'am, I have the best vacuum cleaner in the entire world. It will clean everything. Any mess you have, I promise, it will take it away in an instant." And she said, "Really?" And he looked around and he said, "Oh, you see that pile of dust right there with dust bunnies and dead flies and all that garbage right there?" He said, "I promise you, this vacuum cleaner will clean all that up in a jiffy. And if it doesn't, I'll eat it." And the woman looked at him for a while and looked at the pile of dirt and said, "You better get out your knife and fork because we don't have any electricity here." It's all about power, right? It's all about power. You know, Ernest Holmes used to do a radio show here in Los Angeles, and it was every Sunday morning, and it was on the station that we now know as KFI. And he started that radio show by saying in his booming voice, "There's a power for good in the universe, and you can use it." It's all about power. And we use that power by remembering that we're already connected. We don't have to plug in because we're already plugged in. We just have to remember that we're already connected. On page 44 in the book, Can We Talk to God?, Ernest Holmes says, "The secret of spiritual power is a consciousness of one's union with the whole and the availability of good. We are one with a universal creativeness, which is the God of theology, the spirit of mysticism, the reality of philosophy, and the principle of science. God is accessible to all." And this idea of oneness, this is what your Adventures in Faith program is really about, isn't it? That we're all always connected to the one. Rumi says, "You're not a drop in the ocean, you're the ocean in a drop." And in Science of Mind, we say, God is all that I am, but I'm not all that God is. And I love the metaphor of being a sunbeam to the sun. Just imagine that. Imagine God as the sun in every single one of us. An individualized expression of that, a sunbeam, but connected at a specific point. And then we're one with the one, always one with the one. That's a fundamental principle of religious science, that there's only one and we're all always connected to it. What's more, anything that's known in one place in consciousness, because we're connected to that one mind, is known everywhere. So I understand that you guys are doing this Adventures in Faith program, and it's based on Tracy Brown's book, and that this week is about how many can come together as one and journey as one. How there's power in community and in conscious connection to each other. There's a Zulu philosophy, and if you're reading the book, you've probably read about Ubuntu, and it's about the strength and the power in community, that we're all interdependent, that we're all an individual sunbeam, if you will, but always connected. And when we know that, amazing things can happen. So there was once a little mouse that lived on a farm with a farmer and his wife and a chicken and a pig and a cow. And one day, from his crack in the wall, the little mouse saw that a package was delivered. And he jumped up and down with joy. "Oh my gosh, I wonder what kind of yummy food is going to be in that package, and I hope they drop a lot of it on the ground." Well, the wife opened the package, and lo and behold, it was a mouse trap. Well, he was beside himself, so he ran out to the barn, and he went up to the chicken, Henrietta the hen, and he said, "Henrietta, oh my gosh, there's a mouse trap in the house. There's a mouse trap in the house. What am I ever going to do?" And she scratched her feet and pecked on the ground and said, "You know, Mr. Mouse, I don't know. It really doesn't affect me. I don't know what to tell you." Well, forlorn, he went over to the pig and said, "Pig, there's a mouse trap in the house. What should I do?" And he said, "Doesn't bother me at all." He said, "But now that you know it's there, you might try to avoid it." Well, that didn't help him any. So the mouse went to the cow. And he had to yell really loud because the cow was way up there. And he said, "Cow, there's a mouse trap in the house. There's a mouse trap in the house. What should I do?" And the cow said, "It's no skin off my nose. Well, sad and not certain what to do, the mouse went back to the house to face the mousetrap alone. And that night, there was a loud snap in the house. And the wife got up to go check it out. Now, it was very dark, so she couldn't see what was in the mousetrap. What was in the mousetrap was a venomous snake, and its tail was caught in the trap. Well, the venomous snake bit the farmer's wife, and she got very sick and got a very high fever. So the farmer took her to the hospital, and they got the fever down a little bit, but they couldn't get rid of the fever, so they sent her home to rest. Well, everybody knows that when you have a fever, the cure is homemade chicken soup, right? So the farmer took the hatchet to the barn to get the main ingredient. Well, the wife didn't get any better. So people from the neighborhood, family, friends, all came over to sit with her. Well, there was a lot of people coming by, and he needed to feed them all. So he decided to slaughter the pig. So he slaughtered the pig to feed all these people who were coming to sit with the farmer's wife, and she didn't get any better. In fact, she died. And so many people wanted to come to the funeral that he decided he had to butcher the cow. Well, that little mouse watched from its crack in the wall. I wonder what would have happened if though they had all come together in consciousness and taken that journey together. When one of us is healed, we're all healed because we're all connected to Source. I love the fact that that story reminds us that we are all connected. Science of Mind brings science and spirituality together. So in thinking about this idea and how we are all connected, I decided I was going to talk a little bit about science today. Quantum physics, to be specific, but don't worry, it won't be too heavy. And some of you probably know a lot more about quantum physics than I do, so I'm going to bring it down to a real simple level. The first theory is quantum entanglement, and it's when particles that are once joined together are physically separate and then physically separated, but still connected. So every person that has ever been a part of this spiritual community is still connected to this spiritual community. That's called quantum entanglement. When work is done in consciousness with common intention, things happen. Mountains get moved, magic happens, miracles happen. So let's bring this home. As you go through this co-creation process that you're going through right now, looking at this community and what you want to see in the future here, you're creating in consciousness what you expect to see and experience in the future. Why? Because we know that everything is created twice. First in consciousness and then in form. So as you come together with your vision and your mission that we saw up here earlier, hold that clear intention as a community and take this journey together with all the people that are here today physically and all the people that are entangled with this spiritual community. Do it in your daily practice. Think about that vision and what it is you want this community to feel like and look like. And you'll come up with that together. And when you have that clear vision, hold that in your mind and in your heart in your daily practice. Because together you do journey as one down this road. So there have been thousands of experiments about quantum entanglement. And so many of them prove this idea. I'm not going to get into too much detail, but I want to share some really simple ones. Think about falling in love. When you fall in love, you feel connected to that person, right? Even if they're not there, they're with you. Have you ever been at a party with your back to the door and your beloved walked in and you just knew they were there? That's because you've got that quantum entanglement. You're one with them. How about, and I know everyone's done this, calling somebody on the phone and they say, "Oh my gosh, I was just thinking about you." It's another great example. If you're a parent, you've probably had an experience where all of a sudden your child popped into your mind and you knew something was up. And when you talked to them, you found out something really was up. I have a friend, Jackie, who made her transition a couple years ago. One night I woke up, I looked at the clock, it was 3:13 a.m. And Jackie was like right there. I could almost see her. I could feel her. And I just felt her in my heart. And I thought, what is this about? Well, that morning I found out that she went to the hospital at midnight and she made her transition at 3:13. These are all examples of quantum entanglement. You were once physically connected in some way to that person. And even though you're not with them anymore, they're with you and you're with them because you're one. Now it's Halloween, so I have to share something a little bit Halloween-y. When I was researching this and looking at what I wanted to share, I came across an article about how Einstein had seen quantum entanglement unfold in front of him many, many times, and he couldn't describe it, and of course it hadn't been named yet. He didn't know what to think of it. So you know what he called it? Spooky things that happen at a distance. I love that. I love that. The Heart Math Institute experimented 5 times in 5 different cities with 10 different people, okay, in each city. 5 groups of 2, right? So 5 times, 5 cities, 5 sets of 2 people in each city. And those people, the pairs, meditated together for 30 minutes. And then one of the persons in the pair was put in one room, and another person was put in another room. And they were both hooked up with EEG machines. And so their brain waves could be measured. One person experienced light flashes. Guess what? The other person's brain waves matched the person who was experiencing the light flashes. They were in completely different rooms. But when they meditated together, their energy became entangled. Interesting, huh? Here's another one. Greg Braden, who some of you may know, wrote 22 books about science, spirituality, and human potential. And he did a talk just after 9/11. He came here to Los Angeles to do a talk at a scientific convention just after 9/11, and I saw this on a TED Talk just a few days ago. And apparently, it was right after 9/11, so nobody came to the conference except the people that were presenting, because no one wanted to fly. So the presenters all decided they were going to present to each other. So it was Greg's turn to present, and he stood up and he talked about a little-known experiment that was done by the United States Army. And what they did was they took DNA from a bunch of volunteers. They swabbed the inside of their mouth to get white blood cells. They had equipment that separated the white blood cells. So they had clean strands of DNA. And they put them under high-powered microscopes. And then they separated the person from the DNA. They put the people in another room and scientists with the DNA in a different room. And they started to play video clips to the volunteers. Some clips that were funny, rom-com kind of clips, horror clips, sad clips, all different kinds of video clips to get them to experience and feel different emotions. And what they discovered was that as the emotions of fear and horror were being experienced by the volunteers, the strands of DNA unwound. And as they were experiencing feelings and emotions of love and joy and laughter, the strands of DNA wound tighter. Isn't that interesting? And he said the U.S. Army proved that quantum entanglement exists. Well, that evening, at the end of the night, a guy came up to Greg Braden and he said, "Mr. Braden, I'm Dr. Cleve Baxter, and I want you to know that I am the person that did that experiment with the U.S. Army." And he said, "We didn't stop at just that part of the experiment. The Army stopped, but we didn't." He said, "We decided that we wanted to see if there was any difference in time and distance, space, in how the DNA reacted. So we did the experiment again." He said, "We took the DNA to LA, and we took the volunteers to Phoenix. And we showed them clips, just like before. And isn't it interesting that the moment the emotions in the volunteers changed, the DNA strands changed instantaneously. And we used atomic clocks to measure that. Instantaneous, proving that there's no time or space in consciousness. Fascinating, huh? What's known in one place in consciousness is known everywhere. So the next concept that I want to talk a little bit about is also about us being interconnected, but it says that we don't necessarily have to ever have been in the same place. We don't have to ever have been physically connected, and that's called non-locality. It talks about how two things are interconnected, or many, many things are interconnected, and that interconnectedness can be measured. But it can be measured without any kind of signals that travel through time and through space. So the easiest way for me to talk about that is to talk about prayer. We're not the only religion that believes in prayer. Do you know that every religion and every spiritual philosophy believes that healing can happen at a distance when you pray? It's done because we're connecting with that something greater. We're connecting with that sunbeam, if you will, right? We're remembering the truth of who we are. There's a recent study that was done by the American Academy of Family Physicians. And they found that more than 70% of people across every race, every religion, every cultural background believe that their thoughts and prayers can cause healing for someone else at a distance. And guess what? 83% of medical doctors believe the same thing. They'll say they don't know how it happens, but they believe it. 83% of medical doctors believe in prayer. Isn't that amazing? So that brings me to another concept, another idea that kind of exemplifies this, and it's an ancient Hawaiian practice called Ho'oponopono. Has anybody heard of that? It's a practice of self-love and forgiveness. And I'm going to tell it to you in the context of a story, because that's what I do. And I want to tell you about a book called Zero Limits that was written by Joe Vitale. And he talks about a doctor. In that book, he talks about a Hawaiian doctor who practices Ho'oponopono. And the doctor's name was Ihale Kawa Hao Len. Now, I'm not going to jumble all that again, so I'm just going to call him Dr. Len, okay? So Dr. Len was a therapist in Hawaii at the Hawaiian Institute for the Criminally Insane, a psychiatric hospital. And he worked there for 4 years. And when he got there, they couldn't keep a staff. People were quitting right and left. Physicians, therapists, aides, even the receptionist. People were quitting because the patients were so dangerous. There were patients who couldn't move about without shackles. There were patients who were so medicated they couldn't get out of bed. They were dangerous people there. The staff, when they did show up, would walk down the halls like this with their back against the wall because they were afraid of being attacked. Well, Dr. Len went to work there every single day. He went into his office every single day. But he never saw one patient. In 4 years, he never saw a patient. But something interesting happened. After a couple of months, some of those patients that were on heavy medications were able to move around without so much medication. And some of those patients that were shackled were able to get around without any anger issues, without being violent, was walking around with peace. People started sitting in the garden. People started coming back to visit the patients. And after a year, they didn't have any more staff problems. In fact, they were overstaffed because guess what? Some of the patients got to go home to spend time with their families. Something was happening, and Dr. Len was sitting in his office. So Joe Vitale said, "What is it you're doing when you sit in your office?" And Dr. Len said, "I review the files and I work on myself." Well, I thought that was kind of interesting, so I wanted to read a little bit more about this. And he said, something changed with these people when I started taking responsibility for everything I was seeing, everything I was experiencing. And then he said, and then as I saw those changes happen, the million-dollar question came to me. What was I really doing that was making these changes? He said, really all I was doing was healing the part of me that saw them as sick or ill or different. That's what Ho'oponopono is about. It's healing ourselves, forgiving ourselves. And we might start with somebody out there, but it comes right back to healing ourselves and forgiving ourselves. In the book, he says, when you take complete responsibility for everything in your life, literally everything, we recognize that we're responsible for creating it. And if we're responsible for creating it, guess what? We're responsible for uncreating it too. And that's exactly what he was doing there. But I'll tell you, when I read this, I went, wait a minute. Does that mean that I'm responsible for terrorism, poverty, world hunger, the economic situation in the world, the political situation in the world. That's a hard pill to swallow, right? But the fact that I can see it, the fact that it hurts me and bothers me, tells me that there's something in me that needs to heal. And when this is healed, guess what? That heals out there. Dr. Len says that's because there's no out there out there. And we believe that that world out there that we see is a reflection of this inner world. So when this inner world is healed, that outer world is healed as well. So Joe said, tell me more. Tell me exactly, Dr. Len, what it is that you were doing when you were in there reviewing those files. And he said, I looked at pictures of the patients. And then he said, I would close my eyes and I would say, I'm sorry. I love you. I'm sorry. I love you. Over and over and over again. He said, eventually, the I'm sorry, I love you changed. I wasn't sorry for them. And of course I love them, but it changed. That focus shifted to me. I was sorry that I was seeing their pain, that I was seeing them as separate from me, that I was seeing them sick, or insane, if you will. And then I realized that I had to love that part of me that sometimes felt separate, that sometimes felt sick or insane. Again, there's no out there, he says. It's all an inside job. So he says, the bottom line, if you see something that needs fixing, don't look out there. Look inside and look with love. Isn't that beautiful? So 2 monks were watching the world outside, and there was a flag that was flapping in the wind, and one monk said, look at that, the flag's moving. And the other monk said, oh no, the flag's not moving, the wind is moving. And they argued about this for a while, so they decided to take it to their teacher. And they said to the teacher, is the flag moving or is the wind moving? And the teacher said, both of you are wrong. Consciousness is moving. Nothing out there has to change for everything to change. Energy and matter are absolutely connected, and everything is created twice, first in consciousness and then in form. In his book, The Medium, the Mystic, and the Physicist, Lawrence LeSean, who's a New York psychotherapist and psychological researcher, says the one common denominator with every healer, that the healer sees themselves as one with the person they are wanting to see healed, and one with that something greater, whether you call it God, whether you call it spirit, whatever you call it. They see themselves one with the healee and one with that source of all good, that source of life. He says that's how healing happens, and religious science teaches us this too. It teaches us that there's no separation between who I am and who you are, that we are truly all one, that separation is just an illusion. So there are these 2 brothers who have farms that are next to each other, and they shared labor, they shared meals, they shared tools and seeds and all kinds of things for 40 years, never an argument. Well, one time they had an argument, and it was over something really silly, but it caused a huge divide. And the brothers stopped speaking to each other, and their anger festered and grew. And one day, someone knocked on the door of the older brother. And the older brother came to the door, and it was a carpenter. And the carpenter said, I'm traveling through and I'm looking for some work. Might you have some work that I can do for the day? And the brother said, I do. You see that farm over there across the creek? That's my neighbor. In fact, it's my brother. And we don't talk to each other anymore. And I get angry every time I look across the creek and I see him. So will you just build something so I don't have to see him? So the carpenter thought about it for a minute, and he said, yeah, I can do that. Well, the farmer had some things to do. The brother had some things to do in town, so he got the farmer all set up with the wood and all the things that he would need, and the brother went into town to get his supplies. And at the end of the day, he came back, and he went to go look what was going on, and he thought there was going to be a wall. There wasn't a wall. There was a bridge. And he got angry. He says, what are you doing building me a bridge? I don't want to see my brother across the creek. Then he looked up, and he saw his brother walking across the bridge with his arms open wide. He came up and he hugged him, and he said, oh, my brother. He said, you have proven to me that love never dies. I've been silly. I'm so sorry for everything I've said or done. That moment, a healing happened. And they turned to look at the carpenter who was already walking down the lane. And they said, wait a minute. The older brother said, I have more work for you to do. And the carpenter said, oh no, I have many, many more bridges to build. I know another carpenter who did that same kind of work about 2,000 years ago. Wayne Dyer says that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So we believe in the power of healing. We believe that miracles happen every single day. A Course in Miracles says that a miracle is simply the demonstration of love's presence. It's just love being love. It's just God being God. And they happen every day. We believe that there's no limitation in God. And science has proven that, right? I love that science is proving spiritual principles to be true. Isn't that great? So we also know from science that the brain has the ability to heal itself, that the body can heal itself. And we've all probably seen examples of that with people that we know who are ill and get better. So I want to ask your indulgence in helping me with something. And I know that what's known in one place is known everywhere. And the things that heal me heal everyone. So I'm going to ask John to put up a slide here. I have a daughter, she's 32, and this is not her, but she was raised in this philosophy. She used to go to summer camp, the teen camp and all that, and this young lady went with her. And they're about the same age. They went every single year to summer camp. This young lady's name is Olivia Walker. Everybody knows her as Firefly. And she's a musician, and she's played at a lot of churches in our communities. Well, she also lived up at a ministry called The Launching Pad, which was in Berkeley. My daughter lived there as well, and they became very close. The Launching Pad is exactly what you think it is. It's a big house where a whole bunch of young people lived. It's no longer there, but it was there for many years. It was run by Reverend Dr. Linda Rapont. And her objective was to help launch our young people into adulthood. Very cool place, 11 bedrooms. So Linda and her husband lived there, and 10 young people lived there. Well, Firefly was one of those. And she became a practitioner there. Linda held classes. She took all the prerequisite classes, and she became a practitioner of the science of mind at the Launching Pad. And she's a musician. She played music at their Friday night celebrations, which is their version of our church. They would do it on Friday night. A lot of music and fun talks. Well, a couple of months ago, Firefly was being a troubadour through Europe, and she was hit by a trolley in Bremen, Germany. Massive brain damage. The doctors said that she wasn't going to survive. So her parents flew to Bremen, Germany, and now it's been a few months. She was in a coma for about 10 weeks, and she's starting to come out of the coma. She is able to bat her eyes to yes or no sometimes. She's awake maybe a couple hours a day at the most. She can squeeze a hand. She can even nod sometimes. They had a plastic 3D skull printed that's going to be implanted in her head. And what we know is that the brain is an amazing, amazing instrument. It can heal itself, and the synapses in the brain can wire themselves when we learn things and rewire when they're injured. So what I'm going to ask you to do is hold in consciousness with me for just a minute this beautiful young lady and see her brain firing and rewiring. See her traveling through Europe with that guitar, sharing that bright light that she is. Just for a minute. And I know that what's known in one place in consciousness is known everywhere. That God is right where she is, just like God is right where every one of us is. And as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about a piece of music that played over and over in my head when I was thinking about non-locality and quantum entanglement and the journey of one of this community. And it's a song that was made popular by Bette Midler. It's called God is Watching You. And the lyrics of the chorus go like this. From a distance, We're all just instruments, marching in a common band, playing songs of hope, playing songs of love, playing songs of peace. They're the songs of every man. See, miracles happen every single day. Healing happens every single day. Amazing things happen when we come together as one. And science has proven that to us. There's no such thing as distance. So whether we're physically together or we're together in consciousness, amazing things can and will happen, not only for each of you, but for this community as a whole. When we journey together as one, we go to wonderful, amazing places. And when we come together as one, we know only songs of hope, songs of love, songs of peace, because they are the songs of every man.